Hey, party people. Welcome to the next installment of my fashion history series, the 1930s. I will go into a bit of history so you can have some background cause and effect information to relate to the fashion trends of the time period before going into the fashions. And as usual, I filmed the books because I want to signal to you that my research is grounded mainly in respected and published books, and I hope they serve like citations in an essay. I left captions in many of the shots so you can pause and read them if you wish. The books I used are listed in the description box below. Okay, one little note before we start. Everyone is so obsessed with Dior and the new look to come in 1947 and what a spectacle it all was, but I want you to pay attention to the looks in this video and to consider that the new look didn't come from just nowhere. Consider that fashion is a progression, and it could be said that wartime looks were merely a break from the set progression of trends fashion was setting in the 30s. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you want more fashion history videos in the future. Let's start with a general history timeline. Just so you don't think that history resets itself at the beginning of each decade, there are things that are leftovers from years before the 30s, okay? The Jazz Age, for example, started in 1918, and it continued well into the 30s. Swing music developed in the 30s with its roots in ragtime, big band jazz, and blues. Prohibition started in 1920 and ended in 1933. And one of the reasons Prohibition lost popularity is because the huge amounts of money spent by the government to enforce Prohibition really needed to be funneled into other things because of the Great Depression, which started in 1929. Some historians say that the Great Depression ended in 1939, but many say the economy didn't actually recover until the end of World War II. The Dust Bowl was a period of severe dust storms that greatly damaged the ecology and agriculture across huge swaths of the middle of the US and into Canada, actually. The crime spree of Bonnie and Clyde captured nationwide attention in the US as the press portrayed them as Robin Hood-style bank robbers. Beaten down by the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, the general public loved the idea of these two, madly in love and stealing from the man. Bonnie, who loved taking pictures, left a camera at a crime scene full of pictures of the two of them, which the police then used for wanted posters, further glamorizing the couple. These photos have inspired several movies, directly and indirectly, and countless fashion collections, music albums, videos, and much more. In 1933, Hitler was appointed the Chancellor of Germany, and YouTube will ding me if I cuss, but we all know how well that turned out. In 1937, American aviation pioneer Amelia Earhart vanished while flying over the Pacific. Earhart had a fashion line for a time, designing and selling simple but still feminine clothes in wrinkle-proof, washable materials for an active lifestyle. And in 1939, Great Britain and France declared war on Germany. Now that we have some background history, let's talk about the fashion events of the time. In 1930, Meynbacher set up his couture house. Meynbacher was an American who moved to Paris in 1911, and he worked as a Vogue editor in the 20s until he opened his couture house. And yes, many people say Meynbacher, probably because he lived in France for so long, but it's Meynbacher. Meynbacher closed the house in 1939 because of World War II and promptly moved to New York to open his American salon, as the U.S. didn't enter the war until Pearl Harbor was attacked in December of 1941. Meynbacher reintroduced the waist-cinching corset to fashion in his last Paris collection in 1939. He's probably most famous for designing Wallis Simpson's wedding dress when she married Edward VIII in 1937, which became one of the most copied dresses in history. He was hugely inspired and influenced by Vionnet, using the bias cut and choosing to drape to design as she did. Also in 1930, Elsa Schiaparelli was one of the first designers to use zippers in clothes and the very first to use them in couture pieces. Schiaparelli is known for a lot of things, and many already well known, but one of my favorite things about her work is attention to fasteners. She loved unusual buttons, collaborating with jewelry designers to create buttons shaped like crowns, mirrors, animals, vegetables, musical instruments, poker card emblems, all kinds of stuff. In 1932, Nina Ricci founded her own couture house with her son Robert in Paris. Early years at Nina Ricci were all about dresses and gowns, party dresses, debutante dresses, feminine and ladylike. And Nina Ricci, she had many years' experience as a seamstress and dressmaker prior to opening up her maison, and she draped dresses on live models to design her gowns. In 1933, Lacoste was founded by tennis player René Lacoste and a man named André Gillier, the owner of the largest French knitwear manufacturing firm at the time. Lacoste started with a tennis shirt with the crocodile logo, which is arguably the first time a brand name appeared on the outside of clothing. And the crocodile comes from René Lacoste being nicknamed the crocodile by the press and his fans for his tenacity on the tennis court. Lacoste remains a fashion brand to this day with many product categories, and its current creative director is a woman named Louise Trotter. In 1935, nylon was invented and patented by Wallace Carothers at DuPont's research facility and was used as a silk. Nylon is a silk-like thermoplastic made from petroleum. Nylon first hit the markets in 1938 as nylon bristled toothbrushes, and it debuted at the World's Fair in 1939 as a replacement for silk in hosiery, which is why we so often call stockings or hose nylons, regardless of what they're made of now. And 64 million pair of nylon hose sold the first year on market. And then during World War II, almost all nylon production was diverted to military use for parachutes, and wartime use of nylons and other plastics greatly increased the market for new materials. In 1937, Bausch & Lomb was a medical equipment company looking to make anti-glare glasses for pilots. And that was how the sunglasses brand Ray-Ban came to existence. Get it? Anti-glare, Ray-Ban. And Ray-Ban was sold to Luxottica in 1999. Also in 1937, Cristobal Balenciaga, he had boutiques in Spain starting from 1918, but he opened his couture house in Paris in 1937. In 1938, Columbia Sportswear was founded. And, people don't think of a company like Columbia having such a long history. But remember, clothing expressly for sport was very popular and influential throughout the 20th century. In 1939, war forced Vionnet to close her house yet again, and she retired in 1940. And if any one designer embodied the 30s, it's arguably Vionnet, with her slinky, serpentine dresses, influential bias cuts, Grecian styles, intricate romantic embellishments, the movement of her gowns celebrating the shimmy of women's bodies. And you can see how Christian Dior's evening wear was inspired by her more romantic works and ball gowns. The 1930s was the golden age of Hollywood. Ridiculous budgets, cheap labor, an audience hungry for escapism had Hollywood cranking out visual masterpieces of costume and set design. And at the time, it was largely women who went to the movies or decided which movies to watch. And movie studios really targeted the movies and the marketing to go with it to women. Okay? And part of the marketing was commercial adaptations of movie costumes to be sold at affordable prices. And yeah, many of the movies are extremely elaborate period dramas, so they wouldn't exactly inspire trends directly. However, because of the beautiful world Hollywood built in these movies, that escapism that the movies provided, everyone wanted to look like the movie stars themselves on and off screen. And the 30s saw Hollywood becoming a major fashion and style influence. So let's add some Hollywood timestamps to her background history. In 1930, Jean Harlow starred in Howard Hughes' Hell's Angels, and she became an instant star, a sex symbol. People really became enamored with her look, the opposite of the chic flapper of the 20s, more androgynous with like close cropped hair. Jean Harlow was lush. She was luscious. She showed a lot of skin in these sinuous gowns. She was the sex symbol of the 30s, and her platinum waves and her dark lips and her skinny brows caught on like wildfire. In 1932, MGM released the movie Letty Linton, and Adrian's costumes for Joan Crawford inspired a craze. In particular, the Letty Linton dress inspired a craze for padded, sculpted, extravagant shoulders in the US and beyond. Pick up any book that features fancy dresses from the 30s after the release of Letty Linton, and you will find copies and renditions, including costumes made by other designers for other movies. In 1934, Clark Gable's character went without an undershirt in the movie It Happened One Night, and boom, sales of undershirts plummeted. In 1937, Mae West wanted Elsa Schiaparelli to design some costumes for her, and so she had shipped over a custom dress form made to her measurements. And the following year, Schiaparelli was so shocked and enamored with the shape of Mae West's body, she modeled the bottle for her perfume Shocking after that dress form. Okay, now let's pull these threads together to discuss the fashion trends of the 30s. Hemlines dropped to the ankles, and you will see over the centuries that hemlines dropped during times of economic depression. For day wear, we see defined waists, midi to T-length skirts, lots of prints, florals, plaids, polka dots, suits with defined shoulders becoming more and more padded, sculpted, and exaggerated, and we see a rise in separates and sweater dressing. As more women started working outside the home, daytime looks became more tailored and angular, with square shoulders, with epaulets, plumed hats, low heels, really like feminine versions of men's suiting and military uniforms. Evening wear was more body skimming. Instead of the boxy, straight up and down, flat-chested looks of the flappers, silhouettes became more feminine and figure-hugging as waistlines rose back to their natural place. Torsos were still elongated, but not boxy or straight, but to give figures a more sinuous look. Vionnet invented and started using the bias cut in the 20s, and it became popular all over by the 30s as it created that sinuous, slinky shape. What came first, the popularity of the cut or the popularity of the shape? Mermaid and trumpet skirts became more popular. Mermaid skirts are fitted and then flare out at the knee, and trumpet skirts are fitted and then flare out closer to mid-thigh. Backless styles weren't brand new in the 30s, but became very popular in the 30s. You know, there were some scoop back pieces previously, but nothing so completely bare and low cut like in the 30s. Grecian style gowns with their sensuous body draping looks fit right in with the 30s silhouettes. They were very popular, showcasing many clever ways to apply pleating around the body. Animal prints were shown on clothes for the first time as going on safari in Africa became popular. Yes, during the Great Depression, the rich continued to be rich. Hollywood became influential. Women wanted to emulate the style of stars like Greta Garbo, Marlene Dietrich, Bette Davis, Joan Crawford, Jean Harlow through fashion, but especially through hair and makeup. They all kind of look similar, that 30s look we all know, with the fluffy wavy bobs, huge eyes, long lashes, small dark lips, thin eyebrows. Tanning continued to be popular for both men and women. That healthy tan glow was increasingly popular. Tennis shorts got shorter. Bathing suits became more risque, showing more skin. Some were even backless. Pants started becoming popular for women, but mainly for sport or resort. Resort started becoming a thing in the 30s. They called them pajama pants then, but we call them palazzo pants now. Let's talk about menswear for a minute. Suits were still worn for formal occasions and work, but casual knitted sweaters and soft collar shirts became more and more popular day wear for men. ties were worn less and less. Menswear in the 30s lost a lot of extra layers and accessories that made the 20s so formal. The 30s saw fewer and fewer gloves, canes, waistcoats or vests, formal dress boots, spats, white tie, and tails. Was it the general democratization of fashion influenced by film, or was it finding ways to be fashionable without extra money during the Great Depression? What do you think? Sport continued to influence men's fashion in the 30s, particularly tennis and golf. Wide leg pants continued to be popular, as were plus fours. Men's jackets also accentuated the shoulders with padding. Okay, let's round things out with some concluding thoughts and ideas for your consideration. Of course, it can be said that events like the Great Depression and impending World War would affect the global economy, which in turn would affect the fashion industry. But let's talk more specifically. It was during the 30s that Europe, and Paris in particular, lost its singular grip on dictating fashion for the Western world. Before the 30s, buyers would purchase copies of Paris designs and resell them in their home countries. During the Great Depression, import duties rose to 90%, making these copies ridiculously expensive. However, toiles, aka mock-ups made of muslin or some other cheap fabric, were duty-free. Toiles were sold with instructions on how to construct these clothes, and simplified versions sold at different price points, including very cheap versions all over the US. On top of that, movie studios were selling affordable versions of the popular movie costumes, like the infamous Letty Linton dress, in retail shops as well. Women still sewed at home, but with the increasing access to more affordable retail options, sewing slowly started to decrease in popularity. Access to cheaper versions of fashion, plus experimenting with hair and makeup to emulate their favorite movie stars, was really the first steps of the democratization of fashion. Yes, Paris continued to be and still continues to be hugely influential, and Paris would steal the spotlight again in 1947. But as I said, they lost their almost singular grip on deciding how the Western world dressed. And honestly, I think this is why Europeans still hate the notion of Hollywood and celebrities influencing how people dress, all while the big European houses court major celebrities to be their house ambassadors. Food for thought. All right, that's it for today's video. Please give this video a thumbs up if you learned something new today. It really does help my channel. Let me know in the comments if you want me to continue my fashion history series. Check the description box for links to related videos, information on the books I use in this video, my social media, and I'll see you in the next video.